Well, good evening to you all, and welcome to Tuesday night's Bible study with Chosen People Ministries. Um, Welcome to people who are joining us for the first time, and thank you for your support and encouragement, regulars who we see week after week. We've just been praying for Fiona, and we do want her work in Berlin to be a great testimony to the glory and generosity of God, and it does appear that that is the case. Tonight, tonight we're staying in Isaiah, and we're going to head from Isaiah 9 to Isaiah 65. And I think, that when you're looking at the Bible, very often one of the questions you should ask yourself is what does this book or passage teach you about the character of God? What does it teach you about the character of God? And at a time where really I've found myself having to limit the amount of news that I take in, it's a wonderful thing to see that in Isaiah there's a sovereign power revealed that is used in submissive self-sacrifice. Isaiah shows us that our God is this faithful Father that we prayed about just now, who's willing to use his sovereign power in a way that appears to be very foolish, this submissive self-sacrifice. And he does this for the good of his rebellious people, his broken creation, in order that he will bring glory to his glorious name. And so that's the thing that I love about the book of Isaiah. And last week we were in Isaiah 9, where we learnt about a people in walking in darkness, seeing a great light. And we learnt really that although darkness is a very present reality for us all, darkness isn't the final answer. The final answer is light. And we know that this, what the readers of Isaiah and the hearers of Isaiah in the first place, we know that this is now, we're in the era of light. We're no longer in the era of darkness. We're in the area of light. And we also saw that Zebulun and Naphtali were the first places to be captured by the Assyrians, and that by returning to it's the first people that were kind of punished for their disobedience. That's where God returns to do his redeeming work and to call Gentiles as well as Jewish people to the gospel. And then, of course, we looked at this child. The child, a government will be on his shoulders, and he'll be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Now, I don't want to touch those particular titles, but the thing that really struck me hard was that this child who is born king will reign on David's throne and over his kingdom, establishing and upholding it with justice and righteousness from that time on and forever. The zeal of the Lord Almighty will accomplish this. When this king comes, he will be a king of justice and of righteousness. I think last week Penny reminded us that he's a God of justice and righteousness, and that he's not simply sweeping away the requirement to live a righteous and holy life. Not at all. He's a God who he's the only God that can bring justice and righteousness. And you only have to, if you look at the front of the newspapers today and you see those satellite pictures of bodies left strewn on the road, without the great hope that we have in our God, there's no hope for justice for those families, there was one terrible picture of a dead person with a dog by their side. Even for there's just no there will be no real justice. And so this phrase, the zeal of the Lord Almighty will accomplish this, it gave me great confidence. And it gave me great confidence because it showed me that my zeal isn't going to accomplish this. It isn't what is expected of me. And again, in fact, somebody prayed, I think it may have been Jennifer, we pray that that Fiona's zeal to serve wouldn't leave her exhausted. Because I think you can define zeal as a passionate, enthusiastic energy in the pursuit of a particular objective or goal. So zeal is a passionate enthusiasm which generates a great deal of energy. And what we want Fiona to be able to do, and what we all want to be able to do as disciples, is finish the race. We want to be able to finish the race. So Fiona needs financial support, she needs medical material, but she needs our prayers that she would be careful to use her strengths and her gifts wisely as she serves. And as the spiritual battle increases that she's described, we know that the devil is going to strike at her, separated from her husband, and will push in on anything that he can to make that work more difficult. So please do remember her. The subject of zeal took me on to the next place that zeal is mentioned in Isaiah is in chapter 26, verse 11. And here we have a verse that may be familiar to you, 26 verse 3. You will keep in perfect peace him whose mind is steadfast because he trusts in you. Trust in the Lord forever, for the Lord is the rock eternal. You'll notice he's the Lord, the rock eternal. A doubling like that is the Hebraic emphasis. He really is the rock, and he really is the only rock, and he really is the only eternal one. And that's very often, as you get used to reading Isaiah more and more and looking at the bits beyond the familiar, you'll see this constant drumbeat of he's the Alpha and Omega. He's the beginning and the end. All other gods are merely carved pieces of wood or stone. And in 26 verse 11, God is showing grace. He's shown grace to the wicked. He's shown grace to the wicked, but they've not learnt righteousness. They continue to do evil, and they regard not the majesty of the Lord, which implies for us that this is something that we want to celebrate, his majesty, because, as I said, this sovereign is self-sacrificing. He's a self-sacrificing sovereign committed to self-sacrifice. How many S's can you get? I don't know if that's 7, but maybe I'll think of another one to add. Because he's merciful, but because he's righteous, he will judge. And so in verse 11, his hand is lifted high. His hand of judgment is lifted high, it says, but they don't see it. Let them see your zeal for your people and be put to shame. Let the fire reserved for your enemies consume them. It's a very interesting verse, isn't it? Let them see the zeal for your people Israel. Let the nations see your zeal for the people you have chosen. He's got a zeal for his people. He's got a zeal for you and for me and for all the people that he's gathering into this wonderful tribe, every tongue, tribe, and nation, this wonderful community. If we move on in Isaiah to chapter 37, we come to a section that is, I haven't checked every word, but it looks to me pretty much word for word, 2 Kings sort of 18 and 19. It's this picture, some stories with Hezekiah, and also the king of Assyria, Sennacherib, which I find difficult to say. But the king of Assyria threatens Jerusalem, and but God promises that they will be turned away, and Hezekiah is the recipient of this great act of mercy. But then he incredibly he then entertains the king of Babylon and loses everything to Babylon. And so again, I say, it's good, isn't it, that the zeal of the Lord Almighty accomplishes this final new creation and this final restored universe and this final restored Simon and Denise and Maggie and all of us, Richard, everybody. It's good, isn't it? It's good to know that he who begins a good work in you will see it through to completion. And where do we find, it's where we find the word zeal leads us to thinking about this final piece of eschatological information that this book is going to give us. So 37:32. For out of Jerusalem will come a remnant, out of Mount Zion a band of survivors. The zeal of the Lord Almighty will accomplish this. It is, I think people often say, don't they, we need to remember that no human being can get in the way of God achieving his plans and purposes. And we'll see that as we skip past Isaiah 55. But here we see that a remnant, that's a part of Jerusalem, will come out from Mount Zion like a band of survivors. It might, I mean, let's use the kind of the example of Mariupol, those terrible images. It might look devastated, but out of that devastation will come this great story, this wonderful story. So it's like a building that looks like it's decimated, and the news will finally have something good to show. They'll show out of this decimated image, God leading Israel out in front of all the nations to the glory of his name. It's fantastic. And we don't have to feel the burden of making that happen, because the zeal of the Lord Almighty will accomplish it. You remember, I think we did Isaiah 40, didn't we? I remember from Mark chapter 1. I remember that he reminds us that we are like grass, and the grass withers and the flowers fall, but the word of the Lord stands forever. Again, reminding us that we are the joyful participants in his story. His story isn't us. It's his story, and we're in it. We are grafted in, just as the same way Penny's mother-in-law told the Jewish man that she was grafted into Israel. We're grafted into his story, and I thank God for that. And my favorite, I don't think I'll ever get over this lovely image of the shepherd, the sentimental shepherd carrying the lamb close to his chest. It's such a wonderful image of the sovereign creator of the universe, eternal, wonderful. And amazing to think that that he would become the lamb who was slain in order to redeem us. Incredible. Skip on, if you will, to 59. Oh, well, no, because 55, we did that before. Do you remember the beggar's banquet, I think I called it? Come, this great call in Isaiah 55, come, all of you who are thirsty, come to the waters, and you who have no money, come buy and eat. Come buy and eat. So the idea of purchase remains, but it's a purchase made through somebody else. Some other mechanism is going to occur. And it's not just a meal of bread and water. It's a meal with wine and with milk and with great food and feasting, great joy. And it's this party, which is a celebration of the famous, the faithful love promised to David. And he actually says in there, seek the Lord. Before he says seek him, he promises that he will endow us with splendor, with his splendor. It's an incredible promise. And then, of course, we're going to go out with joy. And as I said, the miracle, there finally will be a miracle grow. The earth will celebrate the presence of its people restored in perfect relationship with it. That's the image. We will go out with joy and be led forth in peace, and the mountains and the hills will burst into song before you, and the trees of the field will famously clap their hands. It's going to be a wonderful sight. Skip on from 55 to 59, not so far to go this time, and see perhaps this evening, the first glimmers of the book of Revelation. Let me read Isaiah 59 from verse 16. The Lord looked and was displeased that there was no justice. He saw that there was no one. He was appalled that there was no one to intercede. So his own arm worked salvation for him, and his own righteousness sustained him. He put on righteousness as his breastplate, and the helmet of salvation on his head. He put on the garments of vengeance and wrapped himself in zeal as in a cloak. Here we do see that, well, we see that the Lord knows. He looks down and he's appalled. And just as we read in Romans, in Romans, there's a thing called the katana, where it quotes the Old Testament saying, there's no one righteous, no one good. And here he looks down and he sees that there is no one to intervene. And so his own arm worked salvation. That his arm is a symbol of his strength. And then the helmet of salvation is on his head. That's what he's coming to do. He's coming to bring salvation to his people. But he puts on two garments, the garment of zealous vengeance. It's not a very politically correct thing to say nowadays, that there is a God who is going to judge us. People, surely, God understands us and he's going to make allowances for us. How could Jesus be clothed in garments of vengeance and wrap himself in a cloak of judgment? But yet this is God's response to looking down and seeing an appalling sight. So he doesn't, this is the other funny thing. A generation back, if you saw something bad happening on the street, people would go and say, "Oi, what are you doing?" Now we're told, "Oh no, you mustn't say anything, don't get involved if it's nothing to do." And so that culture has affected everything, including theology. And it's a great sadness. It's a great sadness. But you see that you see the beginnings of this this great anointing conqueror beginning to appear in Isaiah 59, and in 63:15, the people call. They say they call. It's like the opposite of 59. He looks down, and 63. The people call for him to look down. The remnant. They're calling. They're calling down from heaven in 63 verse 15. Look down from heaven and see from your lofty throne, holy and glorious, where are your zeal and your might? Your tenderness and compassion are withheld from us. There's a recognition there of tenderness and compassion, judgment and mercy. Why, O Lord, do you make us wander from your ways and harden our hearts so that we do not revere you? Return for the sake of your servants, that the tribes that your inheritance. For a little while your people possessed your holy place, but now our enemies have trampled down your sanctuary. We are yours from of old, but you have not ruled over them. They have not been called by your name. They said, "Oh, that you would rend the heavens and come down." And then there's this very powerful images of what it would look like for him to come down, which gets us almost to Isaiah 65, which is where we should begin. Just note in 64 verse 6 is this famous verse, all of us have become like one who is unclean, and all our righteous acts are filthy rags. I just want to. It's a very well-known passage. The filthy rags relate to a menstrual cloth, to blood, and it's a good reminder for us to realize before we go into 65 that we've all become like we're all got uncleanness in us. We all are righteous acts, have filthy motives. But we do have this great hope that one day that will no longer be true. So Isaiah 65, it's the story of a divided community. It's a story of a divided community. Very often you're going to see, like Jesus' story about the wheat and the tares, you're going to see people, the wicked and the righteous, living cheek to cheek. The wicked and the righteous, it's a bit like church, really. But let's see what it says here. I revealed myself to those who did not ask for me. I was found by those who did not seek me. To a nation that did not call on my name, I said, here I am, here I am. It's that sentimental shepherd's back, isn't he? First we'll look at what it says, and then I'll just say something about the context of it. I revealed myself to those who did not ask for me. C.S. Lewis famously described God as the hound of heaven. That he pursued, and certainly Newton wrote about being God pursuing him as well. When I was a happy half Jewish non-practicing atheist, I found myself being pursued by God. There was like a gospel. There was a gospel festival in the park behind my house, and I was on the train, and this man sat down next to me with this big Bible, and somebody else gave me a book, and it was like, what is? And still, I was trying to sort of, and somebody else told me all about this sinner's prayer thing, which I said just to get rid of the person. But he pursues us, and it comes back. This is why I'm so charmed by this idea of God's zeal, of his passionate enthusiasm for us and for his plan, because he has to be passionate and enthusiastic about me to keep me half motivated. He loves us so perfectly, so wonderfully, and so perfectly and wonderfully that he doesn't even see our imperfections. It's amazing. I revealed myself to those who didn't ask, found by those who did not seek. I think I think in 55 last week, seek the Lord, the week before last, seek the Lord while he may be found, call on him while he is near. Let the wicked forsake their ways and the evil man his thoughts. Let him turn to the Lord and he will have mercy on him, and for our God, for he will freely pardon. He wants the very opposite of the post-fall experience in the garden, where the Lord went and sought out Adam and Eve who are hiding. What he wants now is for a people who will seek him. And he is the one who initiates it by revealing himself. And then he allows himself to be found. When my kids were little, all little kids love playing hide and seek in the house. Denise, that cupboard behind you would be a perfect hiding place for a child. They'd be in there, and I don't know if you remember the experience when you find a really good hiding place. Part of the problem is you start laughing because it's such a brilliant hiding place. You have to keep quiet. And one of my kids had I can't remember if it was Felix or Jacob, but he had the best hiding place, and literally for a while until we found the place, which took weeks. I seem to remember. It ruined the game because he was always going to win because no one could find out where he was. And I think one day just laughed and we went, oh no, how could we not seen this? Now, this isn't the game. So God is not like my brilliant son finding the most incredible hiding place ever. He's like in Denise's wardrobe with his leg hanging out and bells on the end of it. That's it. I was found by those who did not seek me, to a nation that did not call on my name. They weren't even invited to play hide and seek, but I dragged them into the house and made them. Here I am, he says, for inside the cupboard. Wonderful. And he's saying this, and then the kind of the cinema lens flips. And he says, all day long I have held out my hands to an obstinate people who walk in ways not good, pursuing their own imaginations, a people who continually provoke me to my very face, offering sacrifices in the gardens and burning incense on the altars of brick, who sit among the graves and spend their nights keeping secret vigil, who eat the flesh of pigs and whose pots hold broth of unclean meat, who say, and this is almost the worst of it, who say, keep away, don't come near, for I am too sacred for you. It's the last thing is interesting, isn't it? It's keep away from me, I'm too righteous. I don't want to get, it's the opposite of Jesus. It's the opposite of Yeshua. He goes rushing, Jesus goes rushing to the lame and the limping and the deaf and the leper and the broken and the bankrupt and the deceitful. He goes running to those kinds of people. And here we see how he is the perfect Israel. Because what God says is religious people who say, don't come near me because I'm too sacred for you, are like smoke in his nostrils. You know, that it's the feet. I don't think it's smoke coming out of his nostrils. I think it's that what happens, the sharp reaction to smoke inhalation. I think that's what that is. I can't be certain, but that's what I think. But look at this. All day long he holds out his hands to an obstinate people. We know this, don't we, from Romans chapter 10. We may, depending on how we get going, we may get to Romans chapter 10, but if not, and you don't know, it's in Romans chapter 10, 21, and Romans 9 to 11 is really a story that is very well described in Isaiah, and we keep going. It keeps popping. head up. So you'll see how God's plan was a people for himself to be witness to the nations to join into that, to be grafted into that, to that tree, to that olive branch, which has the root which the Gentiles can join in. And then when the full number of the Gentiles is in, then all Israel will be saved. And then we'll see this, if it worked. One of the problems with teaching online is you can't really tell how well your illustrations work. But the idea of those that decimated Mariupol building, and then the Jewish believers pouring out of it as if from nowhere, like in Raiders of the Lost Ark, you know, when the ants come, sometimes at one point the ants come and they grab somebody and drag them off. The people will pour out in this one. It is a sort of amazing, wonderful, massive group. Anyway, you'll remember that Isaiah began. Where did he begin his book? Who was he writing to? He was writing to Judah and Jerusalem. And he was being critical of all their religious activity. That's a great understatement. He says, don't bother with your feasts; they're abhorrent to me. And now look what he sees them doing, pursuing their own imagination. And can you imagine a worse thing to say about an Israelite than somebody who eats the flesh of pigs and whose pots hold broth of unclean meat, whilst at the same time thinking of themselves as righteous? And yet, all day long, our God holds out his hands to this people because he loves them, because he's chosen them, and his mercy and his kindness to them reveal his glory, just as his mercy and kindness to us reveal his glory. So there's no change in the character of God, Old Testament or New Testament. I just love to see it there. And it says in verse 6, see, it stands written before me, I will not keep silent, but will pay back in full. I will pay back into their laps both your sins and the sins of your fathers, says the Lord, because they burnt sacrifices on the mountains and defiled me on the hills. I will measure into their laps full payment for their former deeds. I am very grateful that because of Jesus' life, death, and resurrection, God will not have to measure into my lap the full payment for my deeds. That because of the work of the servant in Isaiah 53, my sins have been set apart from me as far as the east is from the west. And that's true for each one of us in this group, and for the wider church, or the wider group of believers. But again, Isaiah is writing to whom? He's writing to Judah and Jerusalem. And so he's already told them that he's going to go after the nations. He's almost said to them, you know, when he says, I revealed myself to those who did not ask for me, he's really saying, in some senses, I made you to be a people to bring the knowledge of me to the world. Since you won't go, I'm going to go. Do you remember? He said the same thing in Ezekiel when he talked about the shepherds, and he said, because you shepherd, you were rubbish shepherds, so I'm going to be the shepherd. Exactly the same idea. So you didn't go to the nations and show the reality, the truth of my existence, and that I'm here and I created everything. So I will go. It won't stop me from trying to reach you. I'll keep my hands all day long. My hat, and the idea there is of prayer. Some people like to think of it as Jesus's hands outstretched on the cross. If you like that and that's helpful, that's great. But it's the original idea is of prayer. And that he prays that these dreadful people who eat the flesh of pig and have these kind of bring and shares with lots of unclean meat, he wants them to come back and turn to him, even though they go out of their way to find bad things to do, like sacrifices in gardens. So, like, the point of the temple and the tabernacle was the centralization of sacrifice, and in gardens, sacrifices in gardens is basically saying you make sacrifices in the wrong place. And then he says, you burning incense on altars of brick. John Hull, do you know why that's a bad thing? Exactly, John. Well done. It's because you don't make an altar from bricks. It's from unhewn stone. So there's just like, and again, there's something wonderful about a God who perfectly loves such an imperfect people. There you go. Anyway, so having said all this, now we're into a much more jolly section about a remnant that will be preserved. This is very much, again, Romans 9 to 11. It says, as when the juice is found in the cluster of grapes, and men say, don't destroy it, yet there is some good in it, so I will do on behalf of my servants and will not destroy them all. I will bring forth descendants from Jacob and Judah, those who will possess my mountains. My chosen will inherit the mountains, and there my servants will live. Sharon will become a pasture for flocks, and the valley of Angkor a resting place for herds, for the people who seek me. So seek the Lord in order, and your reality will be transformed. I have a funny feeling that the valley of Angkor was used earlier as a place of trouble. So it's a place of trouble transformed into a place of peace. The Sharon was a place that was not. It was a place that was supposed to be a place of light, but again, it was a place of darkness. What we see here is that people who seek the Lord will have their experience transformed, and He promises to bring forth descendants from Jacob and Judah. Jacob and Judah is like Isaiah's way of saying the believing remnant. And he gives us this lovely image of a few grapes found like you go into like Ruth and Boaz, like going into the vineyard, and you can just see leaves, and then you say, oh look, those are those few grapes. And apparently some of the commentators say that these few grapes were were highly prized, and then but they talk about that being the church rather than being Israel. But that's the commentators for you. So what can you do? Moving on. But as for you who forsake the Lord, so immediately we're going back. This is why I say this is the story of the divided community. We've just seen the remnant that have returned to the Lord, and now we're going to see in verses 11 to 13 a people who have forsaken the Lord and forgotten the holy mountain being Jerusalem. And instead of like people, when people don't worship God, they don't stop worshiping. They find something else to worship. And in this case, they're worshiping the God of destiny. It says he'll spread a table for fortune and fill bowls mixed with wine for the God of destiny. I will destine for you the sword, and you will all bend down for the slaughter. For I called you, but you did not answer. I spoke to you, but you did not listen. You did evil in my sight and chose what displeases me. Gods who need to be wined and dined are false gods. We remember our God with a supper, don't we? The bread and the wine, they become for us the body and the blood of our Messiah. And if you remember, when Moses was having a management restructuring exercise, he took all the elders on an away day up the mountain, and they had a fellowship meal. together with God, and they saw him face to face and no one died. It's a pretty amazing thing. These gods, what he's saying to Judah and Jerusalem, you worship these false gods. Not only do you have to go chasing after them, but you'll bring on yourself judgment. And I don't want that for you, he says. Therefore, this is what the sovereign Lord says, and this is where this very directly now is going to connect with the meal that we heard described in Isaiah 55. Come and eat without cost. Here, what we see is it's just a lovely picture, 13 down to 15. My servants will eat, my servants will drink, my servants will rejoice, my servants will sing. My servants will sing out of the joy of their hearts. You will leave your name to the chosen ones as a curse. The sovereign Lord will put you up, but to the servants he'll give another name. So I did a very bad job of that. I need to apologize and have another go. It's what you've got here is two groups of people. So my servants will eat, but you will go hungry. My servants will drink, but you will go thirsty. My servants will rejoice, but you will be put to shame. My servants will sing out of the joy of their hearts, but you will cry out from anguish of heart and wail in brokenness of spirit. You will leave your name to my chosen ones as a curse. The sovereign Lord will put you to death, but to his servants he will give you another name. Whoever invokes a blessing in the land will do so by the truth of God. He who takes an oath in the land will swear by the God of truth, for the past troubles will be forgotten and hidden from my eyes, which will include the mess up on that little bit of me trying to explain the text to you. What I wanted you to see is the destination of the servants of God. The destination of the servants of God is to eat, drink, rejoice, and sing. Eat, that's our destination. And yet all day long he puts out his all day long he's calling to humanity, to all of humanity, because he doesn't want them to go hungry. He doesn't want them to be thirsty. He doesn't want them to be put to shame. He doesn't want them to have anguish of heart and wail in brokenness of spirit. Again, the war in Ukraine has given us too many illustrations of what it looks like to wail in brokenness of spirit. He doesn't want that. That's not his. It's not in his. It's not his heart's desire. He's not slow, as some understand slowness, but his slowness is his patience, wanting all of us, as many people as possible, to come to repentance and faith, because Jesus died for the world, to make an invitation possible for even the worst of sinners, someone like myself. So we've seen in 13 to 15 this great party, and then in 17 to 19 we see where the party takes place. Behold, I will create a new heavens and the new earth. The former things will not be remembered, nor will they come to mind, but be glad and rejoice forever in what I will create. For I will create Jerusalem to be a delight, and its people a joy. I will rejoice over Jerusalem and take delight in my people. The sound of weeping and of crying will be heard no more. We won't finish I won't be able to go through all the rest of this verse by verse. And I think most of us can see how closely this resembles the book of Revelation, of John's description of a new heavens and a new earth. But it's great that the former things will not be remembered. That's a great freedom. Nor will they come to mind. So there's some things here is a good bit of modern psychology for us, probably. Here's an application, maybe. Currently, we spend too much time remembering things that are damaging for us. Broken relationships, lost opportunities. In my case, let's take the example of a building project where I got the money completely wrong and I've ended up stuck in a building site until more money arrives, and goodness knows when that's going to be. And I can remember, think, I can dwell on that, and in the new creation, I won't remember it. It won't even come to mind. And this is the wonderful thing about the Christian faith. It gives us, we have a certainty about the past because our faith is based in, our faith is historic. And we have this great and wonderful future that is as certain as the past. And it's that helps us get through the present. That's the importance of the new heavens and the new earth is not that we would wait until it happens, that we would be passive, but that we would see in the suffering and the joy of life that one day only joy. I don't know how we'll know that it's joy because there won't be anything to contrast it to, but never mind that. There's just this wonderful thing. And so when he says, but be glad and rejoice forever in what I will create, for I will create Jerusalem to be a delight and its people a joy. He's saying to us, this is what I'm going to do. I hope I'm excited about it. I'm zealous for it. I'm passionate and enthusiastic about it. And I want you to be, and I want that to be your joy. But be glad and rejoice forever in what I will create. For I'll create Jerusalem to be a delight and its people a joy. I love that he says, I will create Jerusalem to be a delight, because delight is Eden means delight. And so here what we're seeing is that God is going to take us back to where we started in the garden. But there will be no weeping or crying in this new heaven and new earth. And what Isaiah does, I'll take a little bit. I'll just skim over what he does next, because it is a little bit confusing. What he's doing is he's talking to us in ways that we can understand, so that we can think about something that we can't understand. Things that are, so never again will it be an infant that lives but a few days, or an old man who does not live out his years. He'll die at 100. There's no death in the new creation. He's just painting for us he's just saying the same things over and over again to show us how wonderful it's going to be. Like one of the translations for verse 20 says that even if a sinner lives to 100, he'll still be caught. So is a and it's a miserable life on the run for 100 years, I would imagine, as a sinner. And look how what he's going to do when he says he's going to build houses and dwell in them, plant vineyards and eat their fruit, bear children, no children doomed to misfortune. Well, Jesus has told us that there won't be children in that sense. He's just pointing us. He's saying, this is the horrible mess that the first Adam delivered to us, that you know very well. And this is the wonderful future that the second Adam is going to bring to us. You don't really understand it, but just imagine it like this. It's like this. It's like this. It's a bit like this. It's a bit like that. And the finale of Isaiah 65 is the wolf and the lamb will feed together. The lion will eat straw like the ox, but dust will be the serpent's food. Again, we're thrown back to the garden and seen that the punishment is God will judge the devil and his associates. And our natures will be changed so that the wolf can lie down with the lamb. And one little funny thing I found out this week, I don't know if it's funny actually saying that I found in some rabbinic material, that they think that the rabbis think the lambs are Israel and the wolves are the Gentiles. I've never heard that before. It's kind of the oddest thing. What we see is when a lion eats straw, we know that he's been transformed, and that God is in the business of transforming individuals to make them right for his service, and in order that we might live lives that bring glory to him. And we don't even need, we never need to, we see all this in Isaiah, and we never need to even turn to the pages of the New Testament, because this message is just written through the whole of the Old Testament like Brighton written through a stick of rock. And what I want us to remember is this new heavens and new earth will be achieved because the zeal of the Lord Almighty, his passionate enthusiasm for restoration, for restoring you, for restoring creation and restoring community, restoring love, restoring the joy of the division between creature and creator that allows us to see him as he is and see each other as we are. Just wonderful. And I just want to keep saying it's certain because it's his zeal that will accomplish it. We're part of his story, and his story is powerful and perfect, purposeful, and one day will bring us into paradise. Amen. I wonder if they'll take that out of the recording. I imagine they will.